Hello, my name is Bethany Stahl, and I am a full-time author and illustrator. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Here I share all things self-publishing, so from authorship to illustration. And if you are looking for more in-depth information, go over to patreon.com/BethanyStahl, where you can browse in-depth tips, tricks, documents, contracts, and more. And I also have a workshop squad where we get together live monthly and work on a publishing topic. So if that interests you, head over there. For today's video, we are going to be talking about illustration and how I lay out my pages and get started and figure out what the heck I'm even doing from a blank canvas. So when I very first start illustrating, the first thing I like to do is draw the character's face. I know this is different than what you've heard before, but for me, I really make a connection when I see a character's face. And for this particular book that I'm working on now, Cho is coming back, who is a character that I've already illustrated in another one of my books, Save the Bees. So I do have a base of how she looks, but of course my style has changed over the years since Save the Bees, so I do want to spice it up a little bit and bring a little bit more color and life to her face and to her character in general. But luckily, I already do have a pretty set color palette that I want to work with. Now, for this book, I do want really vibrant, pretty colors, so I do go very saturated and elaborate colors in this book. And then in terms of character design, as you can see, I started off with a triangle shape and a circle shape, and that is a really great way to build characters from nothing into something. So we are all shapes, and you've heard this before. Our faces may be oval or circle or heart, and our body types might be round, pear, hourglass. So we are all built in different shapes, and characters are no different. So you can use those to help build your character, or you can take it to the extreme. For example, in SpongeBob, SpongeBob is a square, Mr. Krabs is a triangle, Patrick is a star, and even Miss Puff is a circle. So they really pushed shapes to the extreme, but it works because each character is so memorable and so different. I do like all my characters being relatively balanced, so for my Save the Earth series, I don't go to extreme shapes. Now, when you are very first laying out a book, you have to make your canvas, and knowing the canvas size will help, especially if you're illustrating for yourself or an author. You will want to make sure you've got the right size. Now, since I work in double page spreads, so a spread is 2 pages that you will see open side by side, what I do is I just double the size of one page on the other side and make sure I'm accounting for bleed space and everything in that manner. Each publishing platform, depending on what they're using, will have different requirements, so just use the biggest requirement and go with that one. And then the formatter or the author, if they're formatting it, or if you are the author and you are formatting it, you can figure out that later and make it work, but always go for the biggest size. Now, if you don't like full page spreads, you are able to do half pages or spot illustrations where you're putting illustrations into little circles or shapes, or you can just have illustrations without a background. There is no rules. It's just what works best for you. And a lot of you have asked, how do you place text and illustrations? How do you figure that out? Well, for me, you can see I've actually mapped out where I want the dad to be and where I want my text to be. Since I am working in a series, I have the luxury of having my other books done, so I know my text is always in the same spots in every single book. So I start with the top left, sometimes it goes in the bottom right. So having this knowing sort of helps me know where to go, but if you're starting off new, it really depends on how much text you have. If you have a very low word count, maybe big spot illustrations or half-page illustrations, full spread illustrations will really work well for you. If you have a book that's very, very wordy, you may want to stick to half-page illustrations and put all of your text on one half of the book and pictures on the other. Or you can do a mix of all of them. Again, there's no rules, just whatever works best. Now, if you're an illustrator and you're working with an author and you're trying to base what they have, your author needs to have an idea of how much text is going on each page and how much space they need. So authors, be aware to tell this to your illustrator so they are able to make an appropriate sized box and you aren't cramming a ton of text in a small space. So the author should tell you, hey, this is how much text I have. I need, 6 inches by 3 inches on every page. And you can leave that space blank. You can make it fuzzy behind there. You can do whatever you want. Just be clear about what the author is expecting from you. That way you can leave that space. I like to do full spreads, as you all know, and I typically leave my text space in the sky. So where I plan on having text, I will keep the bushes a little bit lower, or I will make sure that there is not a lot going on behind there. Even sometimes I've done it in the ground, so if there's a grass patch there, just making sure that there is not a lot of distracting detail that will pull away from the text. And in terms of composition, I like to keep a movement throughout my books. So for example, this page, Cho is on the right side of the page and she's walking down this squiggling path that is leading her to Dad. And Dad is in this nice hunched position where he is looking back towards Cho. So we are going to be caught in this sort of circular momentum where we're going to lock eyes with Cho since she's the only character looking at us. And then we're going to follow her path down, see what Dad's doing over here in the corner, and then we're going to look at Dad's face and follow Dad back up to Cho's face. That creates this element of wrapping everything back in. The horizon line is also going to bring us straight back to Cho's face if we get stuck on the horizon line. So essentially, everything is going to lead us back to that starting point. In terms of brushes and what I'm using to create my illustrations, for my Save the Earth series, I only use 2 different brushes. I use a pencil that is a little bit degraded, so I have that natural toothy look on the edges. So nothing too crazy, but enough to where there's a little bit of texture and it's not completely flat. And then for shading, I like to use a chalk type of brush that has a lot of different variants and really gets a nice charcoaly natural rub look. That way I can have some texture in my work. Now, this is not what I recommend for everyone. Every style is going to require something different. So just make sure you are doing something that you like and you love. Again, this is something that I committed to the very first book in my series, and I have tried to keep my illustration style as similar as possible throughout the series. I have slowly been tweaking it to my newer style. That way, over time, it can evolve without being a stark contrast when you open up a new book and go, oh, holy crap, who illustrated this one? So I have been doing a slow change, and you can even see that with my work. If you compare Kalisha from Save the Ocean to Kalisha from Save the Sharks, she has evolved quite a bit and grown eyebrows this time. And this is just something that changes over time. And if you're working on a series for someone, if the style is changing, just make sure you do it incredibly slow. I like to take breaks from my work. That way I can have a little bit more freedom in my illustration style. So if you look at Dreaming in the Night, Mermaids in the Sea, or even Little Red from MEEKO'S Nutty Tales, I have done different styles in all of those to just give myself a breath of fresh air from my typical style. In terms of color choice, I typically stick to blues in my Save the Earth series, but with Save the Land, I went pink. So in this book, I want to make sure I go pink again to balance out my series. But I do recommend picking a color palette for your series that works. That way, when your characters, if your characters start to intermingle like mine have, they aren't out of place when you're putting one style next to another style and all these crazy colors clash. We really want them to go together. So just keeping a sort of cohesive look for the entire series is really important. For this book, I really wanted to do a lot of bright illustrations. I wanted it to almost be like a different spectrum of light, and you'll see why when you find out what this book is about. But I really wanted those extreme colors to really bring the characters to life and get a little bit outside of my comfort zone with the series, and again give a gateway into being a little bit more whimsical as the series progresses versus being stuck in a style that I feel like I've outgrown a little bit. So I hope this is making sense so far. Illustration takes just a little bit to get used to. So if you are new or if you're wondering how I lay out my characters, I like to start off with blocking off color for my characters. So for their face, for their arms, for their shirt, pants, everything. And then after that, I will create a series of clipping masks, or if the layer is small, I will just lock the layer and color on the layer. And then that's where I will put my shading. I have made way too many a mistake drawing on the actual layer and not creating clipping masks, and got myself in trouble to where I wanted to change something and I couldn't. So just to be aware of what you're committing to when you are making your work. And you will see in this whole video, I keep zooming in and I zoom out and I zoom in and I zoom out. And I also have my navigator open over on my right hand side. And that is to help me visualize the whole composition. As I get close, I could definitely start to make mistakes if things aren't exactly shaping out what I imagine them to be. So doing this repeated motion of being close and then going back and then coming close and then going back really helps me make sure that I'm not going crazy with some sort of style or choice that I've made, and that it continues to look proportioned and balanced and moving along well. Throughout the entire series, I will keep something that's cohesive, and I will keep this sort of compact style. So this one does take place all in one setting, so I am able to keep using the sky repetitively and using that as my indicator to portray time, so I can slowly make the sun set or rise depending on how the time is progressing. And little things like that will really impact how your illustrations portray themselves to children, because as we know, the stories are for kids, but the illustrations are what sells it. We want the kids to be looking at it, to be engaged, to be engrossed, to find that unique thing about your illustrations and get stuck looking at that. As you can see for a shoe, I was just comparing how I illustrated Cho's shoes from Save the Bees. That way I can keep the same shoe style. And again, this is very important to create that little bit of element of cohesion. So Cho has changed just a little bit. Like I said, I wanted to give her a little bit more shape, a little bit more character as she develops into her own character this book, because this is the first book where she gets to be her own main character and not a co-character with Mateo. So Mateo has gone on and gotten to be with other characters as well, but Cho was ready for her own breakout story. So she is amazing and one of my favorite characters. And in terms of naming characters and character design, all of my characters are either designed or named after friends or family or somebody I know or admire. And my designs are embarrassingly of subconsciously of the media I'm watching. So I know characters will start to resemble characters I'm watching in shows. And it's really funny to see this happen because I know when I look at my books of what TV show was on in the background when I was designing certain characters, because you have that subconscious level of interactions. So I will say I was watching the Twilight series when I was illustrating Save the Sharks, and one of the characters in the Save the Sharks book looks like Victoria, the bad guy from Twilight. So it's really funny to see those sort of influences on your own work. But I do like to design them after friends or family or somebody I know, just because I think it's really cool to sort of put someone in the book forever. So all of these have nods to friends. So that's really, really cool and exciting. And in terms of naming, I know this doesn't have to do with illustration, but I either like their names to be significant somehow to the story, to where the meaning of their name means something. So Kalisha and Agwe are named with historical context, but people like Cho are named after. So that is kind of interesting, of how it's either, if there's no historical context, then they're probably named after a friend. At the very end, I do like to do some sort of blurs on my work to try and focus in the setting. That way we aren't caught up on the front matter or the back matter of the illustration, and it sort of forms it all into one nice little pancake of viewing. This is something I did throughout my Save the Earth series, so I do try to keep up with that. That way I, again, keep being married to a style. I will say, if you don't like something, or if you don't think you'll like it, don't do it, because you're going to marry it if you are working on a series. That's my biggest advice, is just make sure you really, really, really like it. So, and then as you progress and as you illustrate other pages in your book, just make sure you keep changing it up. So since I did this sort of triangle of information on this page, on the next page, I don't want to repeat this same triangle of information. I do want to change up the perspective, so everything doesn't have to be looking on this flat plane. We can look down at the characters or up at the characters, or we can get really close or really far away. So it doesn't have to be this whole TV show sort of 2D plane that we're playing on. We're allowed to move around in 3 dimensions, and that also helps make your book a lot more engaging and makes your book really interesting. So those types of different movements of being close and being far and being above and being below really will shape your work. So don't be afraid to switch it up from the norm of this 2D style of book. Children, I promise you, love all the different perspectives and will be like, whoa, that's what the top of their head looks like? No way. I'm serious. They love it. So the more creative you are, the better it will turn out. I hope watching this illustration has helped. I hope it's helped paint a picture of what you can do with your own work. And you will see this illustration. It is the first spread in my next book coming out very, very soon. So make sure you guys subscribe and keep an eye out for what is to come next. Don't forget, if this video has helped, please give it a thumbs up. It makes me feel good on the inside and know that I'm doing a good job, and I love to see those. And if you do want to get notifications of the next videos to come out, feel free to subscribe, and also comment below with your favorite illustration style. Is it spot? Is it spread? Is it half page? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. And of course, feel free to ask any questions. I do see them, so I will make sure I answer those in future videos. Have a great day, and happy publishing and happy illustrating. I will see you all next time. If you are looking for more information about publishing, go over to bethanystahl.com/classes to see a huge collection of information that I have gathered for you, separated out into topics. Now, most of these classes are free to access, but there are a few that are exclusive to my self-pub patrons. If you do want to join that, go over to patreon.com/BethanyStahl, where you can join and get access to the classes as well as other behind-the-scenes tips, tricks, and documents that are exclusive to that squad. If you are trying to get into contact with me to ask questions, the best place to do that would be Patreon. I do see all of those messages and comments first, and I am able to reply to those almost immediately. So that is the best place for more individualized help. I hope this video has helped, and I will see you all next time.